Hi there, I'm Tanya. I'm an adult child of divorce. My parents broke up when I was 10 years old, and at the time I had no clue that their marriage was in trouble or that they were considering breaking up. For me, everything changed overnight. One day, my parents were living under the same roof, and the next day, my mom had moved out and in with somebody else, and she was no longer part of my life in the way she'd been for the first 10 years. And this was a drastic, huge, dramatic, traumatic, painful, confusing, difficult experience for me. And like most of us, I went through a stage of anger, frustration, sadness. I was shocked, I was confused, and then eventually I got used to it. And my parents living in two different places, spending time going back and forth between them just became a normal part of my life. And it's amazing the way children can cope and adapt with change and transition. It's an amazing and beautiful thing. So getting used to your parents' breakup is a really helpful coping mechanism to the new reality of your life. But the challenge is that it shapes your view of yourself, of family, of relationships, marriage, the future. And instead of looking at the future with positivity, with hope, feeling equipped to find a mate, get married, start a family, and live your adult life, you're often full of questions, doubts, and insecurities. At least I was. And I still find myself wondering who's going to leave me next, wondering who I can depend on, wondering if I'm good enough for the people around me, wondering what it is that's wrong with me that led to my mom abandoning me. And the tragic and terrible thing about our experiences, particularly in childhood, but also in our adult life, is that they don't respond to reason alone. What I mean by that is I can confidently say, yes, I am valuable, I am lovable, I am not the reason that my parents split up. And yet, when I think about my inner world and my fears and insecurities that I've wrestled with for my entire life, I see how many of them are still tied up in that belief that there's something wrong with me, that people are going to leave me, that the world is a scary or dangerous place, and that I'm not able to simply relax in my sense of belonging with my family. If you grew up with divorced or separated parents, I wouldn't be surprised if there are similar messages at work inside of you that are still impacting you as an adult. I've seen children of divorce approach these fears and questions in a number of ways, and I have done all of them myself. The first one is simply denying that the breakup is a big deal and saying things like, it happened a long time ago, and my parents weren't happy, and it's better that they're not together, and I think it all worked out for the good, and it's better to be happy than to be with somebody that makes you unhappy, and so on and so on. All of these things are our attempt to downplay the pain that we experienced by looking at it through the lens of what's best for our parents. Another thing we might do is to say, well, yeah, but I've forgiven them now and I'm over it. I've been able to move on. But this denies the reality of the fact that what we experience as children through the foundational relationships of our parents and family, these things shape us and they form us and they make us into the kind of people that we are, and we can't just pick and choose certain parts of it and leave them behind. Another thing that we might do is to say, well, that was a bad situation, but once I'm 18 or 25 or 30 or moved out of the house or have my own spouse or my own family, then everything will be fine. I don't have to deal with that anymore. But this idea also denies the reality that what we've seen modeled to us in relationships and marriage and romantic relationships, what we've experienced in terms of dependability, trust, predictability, and commitment, these things shape our view of what we expect from relationships and how we also show up for other people in our own lives. Another thing I see children of divorce doing is simply trying to keep ourselves busy and distracted. And there are 1,001 ways to do this. Everything from doing really great at your job, staying busy in your social life, having goals and hobbies so that you don't have to actually ever stop and feel your pain, feel your frustration, feel your sadness, and deal with it. There's a lot of reasons why we do these things. We may love our parents deeply and feel like to talk badly about their breakup is to betray them and maybe even the pain that they've been through. Perhaps we don't want to draw attention to what we might see as flaw or weakness in our family, in our own story, or in our own lives. And so we try to put a happy face on our experience. We You might realize that divorce is really common, and so we feel weird to even point out the fact that it could be damaging to children. What I'm not trying to say is that growing up with divorced parents is some kind of lifelong sentence, that you are going to be doomed to having terrible relationships, terrible mental health, terrible self-worth, or anything like that. What I am trying to say is that unprocessed pain, loss, and grief will follow you through your life until you're able to look at it, think about it, talk about it, and move on. Now, if you're a child of divorce who has a fantastic romantic relationship, a great family, who has no struggles, insecurities, or fears, then that is fantastic. I'm so happy for you. But if you don't fit in that category, if you are noticing that there are lingering fears, doubts, insecurities about who you are, about where you belong in the world, about your future, about who would want you and want to be with you, if you're struggling to find and maintain a romantic relationship, if you have insecurities about your career, about where you belong, about the purpose in life, then perhaps it's worth spending some time to look back on your childhood experiences and to dig apart a little bit your parents' breakup. There are a lot of different ways that you can do that. First of all, you can start by educating yourself through reading books or listening to podcasts about this topic and paying attention to what things you resonate with. Does that apply to you? Do you see yourself in the scenarios that are being painted and the stories that are being told? Another way would be to talk to a trusted friend about your experience. Maybe talk to another child of divorce, and maybe talk to somebody from an intact family and hear about their experiences, and simply pay attention to what things you can relate to or you don't relate to in the other person's story. Counseling always sounds scary to people who aren't familiar with it, but counseling is a fantastic space to think about your past, for somebody with wisdom and experience to ask you some questions and to help you really make some of those connections that you might be missing. For myself, I've found that there are no quick fixes to healing from this pain. It has been a slow and gradual journey for me, a journey of healing, a journey of learning to have healthy relationships, a journey to understand more about who I truly am when I stopped trying to pretend I was someone who I wasn't. And maybe one of the simplest and easiest things you could do was simply to follow or subscribe to my social media and listen to the things that I have to say, see if they resonate with you, and see where that takes you. Because as a child of divorced or separated parents, you are not doomed to walk in the footsteps of your parents. It is possible for you to have healthy relationships, strong connections, a good family. But it's not going to happen by accident or simply by gritting your teeth and trying really hard to be an amazing spouse, parent, or partner. I'm here to say that your pain matters, your experience is important. What you've been through is really difficult, and you don't have to go through the rest of your journey alone.